Hey YouTube, what if you could have only 5 specific bushcraft or camping tools for the rest of your life? Which ones would you bet the rest of your life on? What 5 would you choose? How would you even decide? In 5 to Survive, we ask experts what tools they would choose. We pick their brains about why and give you 5 things to consider adding to your gear. We also learn a little about the skills you need to use those tools. Whether you learn something or just enjoy listening to outdoor geeks talking about their gear, please subscribe and hit the notification button. We also have a companion podcast that includes all of the discussion in the YouTube episodes, but it includes more in-depth discussion with the experts, the why behind their what of their choices, and some laughs. I'm Joe Bassett, this is Valiant Outfitters, and you're about to discover 5 to Survive. Most worst-case scenarios are resolved within the first 72 hours. Whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, a blizzard, earthquake, civil unrest, whatever it is, you usually only need to survive unassisted for 3 days or less. That's why we at Valiant Outfitters emphasize preparing yourself with skills that are actionable in those first 3 days following a terrible, horrible, very bad day. So today, we're talking with the Preparedness Guy himself, Nat Sellers, about what tools he would want in his 72-hour bag if he could have only 5 tools for the rest of his life. Nat's a professional emergency manager and a disaster preparedness instructor. But don't let his baby face fool you. He has years of experience and a master's degree in emergency and disaster management. If that's not enough reason to learn from him, he's a former combat medic and hazmat technician. Today, he's accepted the 5 to Survive challenge to choose 5 tools for his own 72-hour bag. Okay, we'll let him pick a wild card, so there'll be a total of 6 tools. I'm Joe Bassett, this is Valiant Outfitters, and you're about to discover 5 to Survive. Hey Nat, welcome to Valiant Outfitters 5 to Survive. Hopefully your stellar social media reputation won't be too damaged by our subpar production standards.
I am honored to be here, and I feel like this is a step up for me.
Well, in full disclosure, of course, but we're having to reshoot this for people that are watching on YouTube because I royally messed up the first one. But with that, step down for you. Not really. Your IG content is fantastic. I think I've chuckled, chortled, giggled, and even LOL'd out loud every single one of your IG stories. Where do you get that creativity from? Where do you get those ideas?
It's not as hard as I thought it would be. So I mostly glean it off of what I see other people doing, and then as inspiration, and then adapt it to emergency preparedness. I remember seeing a friend of mine do some videos like that. Like, man, how does he think of something so often? And once you kind of get in the rhythm of it, it's just a game. I'll do it as long as I enjoy it, and then if not, I'll drop it. It's not. It's fun, but that's why I do it. It's because it's fun. I also, when I'm watching a movie or listening to something, if I hear something good, I think I'm going to adapt that one. Try to steal the audio, turn it into a quick video.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by even the one you did today, or at least the one I saw today on your IG story. You did like a lip sync,
Yeah,
and where do you find those songs that give you that idea, even though you don't do exactly the same words, but you'll find something that gives you that idea?
right. Most of them are built into the Instagram app. They've got the reels you can borrow audio from another reel, or they have a library of songs and audio clips. So I can take them from, if somebody posts a reel, I can just steal their audio. And then if it's a song or a quote from a movie, I lip sync it. I listen to it. I turn down the speed, so I say it slowly. It gives me less of a chance for messing it up. And then I do text overlay to make it applicable to emergency preparedness.
Well, I'm going to make sure to link to your Instagram account because even if you're not into like preparedness, which of course you should be, but if you're
Right.
not, it's worth it just for the yucks you'll get from the stuff that Nat does, and if you're not into preparedness before watching his stuff, you will be. Uh,
That's right. Be
so
prepared, everybody.
I also wanted to ask about your logo. I love that oil burning lantern. There must be a story behind that. Can you unpack that a bit?
There is. So it wasn't until last year that I officially, like really leaned into being the preparedness guy and, started it as a business more than just a fun hobby. And before that, I had a separate logo, and I made it on a clip art site for free, and it was just a stick figure holding up the earth, and there were some disasters happening above, an asteroid, a tornado, something else I don't remember. And the idea was Atlas, who's the Titan in Greek mythology, and he's holding the world. But each of us, when we're in a disaster, have the weight of the world on us. But preparedness helps us carry that. And I like the idea of the mythology in there. So when I was switching, I said, okay, I'm gonna actually come up with a real logo, not something I pieced together in 10 minutes. And I was going through a few things. I liked the Titan theme, the whole Olympian idea, and Prometheus is my other favorite Titan. He's the one who brought fire to mankind in Greek
Hmm.
mythology, and that's enlightenment, progress, advancement, technology, all this stuff. It's a symbol of basically moving forward, and I like the idea of sharing light. And with that, I thought of the biblical story in the New Testament, Matthew 25. Jesus tells a parable of the 10 virgins or 10 handmaidens, and
Hmm.
it's such a beautiful story, and it's applicable to preparedness. But it's not applicable in the way that most people look at preparedness. We all think we're preparing for a terrible thing that will happen. But I really like the perspective that there were 10 ladies who were there. They were waiting for the groom and his procession to come, and they were all going to be, these 10 were going to be bridesmaids. And they're waiting to go to a party. They wanted to do something fun, something exciting, enjoyable, and that's the wedding feast. And that mentality, I like to do a lot of things. I like to have a good life. I like to enjoy myself, have recreational activities, whatever I'm doing. And then my preparedness mentality is, what do I need to do to make sure I can do that? So 5 of them thought, hey, in case anything disrupts my plans, I'm going to make sure I have some extra oil. And the other 5 said, well, I'm not going to worry about it, or they didn't even think about it. They just went. But the groom came way later than anyone expected. Came at midnight, and the oil had all burned out. 5 of them had brought more oil, and it was only enough for them to use. It wasn't something they could share with the others. They told the others, well, you need to go and try to buy some, but it was midnight. Of course, they couldn't. So it talks about being prepared ahead of time, but also just making sure your needs are met beforehand. You can't share the oil. The oil symbolizes the things that are internal, the things that are a part of you. But you can help people to get their own oil, and you can share the flame if they have it. So it kind of has that Promethean thing to where he shares the fire. But each of us, when we encourage other people or when we talk about preparedness, we're encouraging other people to put the oil in their own lamps, but also we can share that light with them. We can light the flame of preparedness for other people.
Yeah, I love how much you've packed into that logo. Um, all the way from, all right, preparedness is one facet, but preparing to be generous is a completely different level that I think we miss a lot of times. And preparing that, it's not just to get by, it's not just to survive, on a terrible, horrible, very bad, no good day. It's, to prepare to thrive, to not just, eke out in his existence. I had a mentor when he was teaching a skill, he would drill into us, good enough isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's funny because you say good enough isn't what? Oh, I get it now. Good enough isn't good enough.
Right.
Um, you know, I have a phrase I use that I probably need to get out of when I have to jury rig something. My son-in-law likes to tease me. In fact, I didn't even realize I said this until he pointed it out to me. But I'll say, um, there, that ought to work. Where if I prepare well, I don't need to worry about what ought to work. It's going to work, and in fact, it's going to excel above what I need. And I like how you've built all of that into that logo.
Yeah. 99.9% of emergencies aren't going to be so cataclysmic that we're not going to work together. The whole doomsday idea, it's fun to think about and talk about, but humans or mankind, we've survived every disaster as a species that we've faced. We haven't faced a complete extinction of our human species, and but we have experienced lots of just regular disruptions to everyday life. And being prepared means identifying your needs, providing for those needs before you need it. That way, when something happens, your threshold for emergency is higher. So disruptions can happen, but it doesn't become an emergency until it disrupts your needs.
Right. I think we tend to get fooled into preparing for the sexy disaster rather than the most likely disaster. Preparing for the zombie apocalypse or, the meteor strike is the fun one to prepare for. But really, the thing that most of us are going to face is getting lost in the woods or being stuck in our car in a snowstorm.
Right.
I mean, that's not any fun to prepare for.
No, it's the boring short term things, and most disasters that happen, you're going to be at home and you'll just be sitting around twiddling your thumbs. You just won't have the modern conveniences.
Yeah, it's funny. I'd forgotten about this, but when the whole COVID thing started, I had deployed for, I had 5, 6 hurricanes, with my radios and got those all set up. And then COVID hit, and I commented to my wife and some friends, hey, I said, my superpowers don't apply to this one.
Yeah. Oh,
It's like,
sorry.
it's like, could I call somebody on the radio and talk about how sick we are? Or,
But
hey,
that's
talk.
an important point, because the CDC back during the Walking Dead, the height of Walking Dead's popularity and the zombie apocalypse books and shows, everything was coming out. It's a fun genre, but the CDC, they put out that public service announcement, says if you're prepared for zombies, you're prepared for anything. And it was a witty, clever, public service announcement that capitalized on the public interest of the time. So I thought that was a successful public service announcement. But I think the message is upside down. It's, you don't prepare for a specific scenario, because then you're going to face a scenario where those skills won't apply. Suddenly, well, I'm prepared for a zombie apocalypse, but the power went out, and you're like, okay, what do I do? So the focus needs to be upside down. If you prepare for all of your needs and then extend those out as long term as possible, then you're prepared for anything. It doesn't matter what the hazard is. Doesn't matter what the disruption is. If you're preparing for your needs, food, water, shelter, sanitation, power, et cetera, and it doesn't matter if it's zombies or power outage or a snowstorm or an earthquake, you've got them covered.
Yeah, I mean there's so much, cross pollination there in what you're going to prepare for. It brings back that that basis of the rule of threes. 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and that's going to apply pretty much whatever happens, whether it's zombies attacking or a hurricane or an earthquake.
Right.
Well, let's put all that to good use here on Five to Survive. Let's go from that standpoint of, all right, we need to prepare for all these things, but we're gonna take a limited look so that we can, no tools are going to work in certain circumstances, but we can also have a grasp of prioritizing them. So here are our rules of engagement. for five to survive. I've asked you to consider one tool in each of five categories that you would want in your 72-hour bag if you could have only one in each category for the rest of your life. And within each of those categories, I'm going to give you leeway. You could choose any tool that you feel fits into that category, even one that we might not traditionally look at in that category, but might tool or might work. Here they are, those categories. First, a multi-tool. Number two, shelter, some type of fire ignition. You can go either way with that because there's some cross purposes there. Water sanitation source storage, whether it's going to be a way to filter and purify water, or is it going to be a way to store it so that you have it beforehand? First aid and hygiene and nutrition. Then, of course, I'm going to let you add one wildcard tool, which is a polite way for you to be saying to, hey, Joe, do you even survive? Do you know how to prepare? Because that's a pretty boneheaded list of categories. Or if you'd like to, you can add a tool to any of those other categories. And then finally, we'll talk the why behind the what, because I think it's important for people to understand the thought process that goes into a lot of this. So I'm going to give you some questions about how you might use that tool or how you might modify the tool. And then as we go through, I'll do my best to include links. These are Amazon affiliate links to purchase tools that you recommend. If there's something of your own that you'd like to market, if it really is your choice in that category, please don't hesitate to use it because we're not above self-promotion and self-aggrandizement. We're unabashed capitalists here. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it.
Okay, let's do it. Going through this, and I told you this before, I think, I thought to myself, Joe doesn't know how hard this is. And then I realized, of course he does. That's why he's doing it. he made it hard. This was a difficult thing to choose because there are so many things that I want. So some assumptions I'm going with are that I only have my kit. So I have to ignore any EDC stuff I would normally have. And then I want it to fit into a regular backpack. And so the first multi-tool, I'll show you couple that I did not choose, and then the one I did. So for most emergency kits, when you buy a prepackaged emergency kit, it comes with one of these. And it's pretty handy. It's got a gas shut off, water shut off, and then like a little pry bar, can help you out. If you're stuck in some rubble, you can try to push it out. It's mostly a utility tool, which can come in handy. But then I just thought of the regular multi-tools that I use normally and narrowed them down to a Gerber or a Leatherman. And I've used them both. I used the Gerber exclusively for many years, and then the Leatherman exclusively for the past several years. And I prefer the Leatherman. To me, it's sturdier, more functional. I use it nearly every single day, some feature on there. And that is my multi-tool choice. This one's a Leatherman Surge, but I think there are other options that could be other Leatherman options, but the Leatherman is my multi-tool choice that I would keep in my emergency kit.
Now, are you by and large a Leatherman guy?
I never really had a problem with the Gerber. Again, I used that for several years. I've carried it every day. The Leatherman is just sturdier, and I feel like it has more function. I didn't use everything on here, but pretty much. And it has the regular blade, but it also has the serrated blade and scissors and this little saw. I just used that yesterday. It's got some sawdust on there. So it has lots of little things, plus the screwdriver, and you swap it out. So it's got both Phillips and standard, and then the regular can opener and everything else. But I feel it's sturdier and more versatile than that. But I don't have any problem with the Gerber.
Yeah, I don't with the Gerber either. I'm a Leatherman guy, but it's only because the first multi-tool that I had was given to me as a gift from a really dear friend, and it was a Leatherman, and I stayed with that. But I've been out in the the field and had somebody hand me a Gerber, and I've been very impressed with them. So I'm really just a Leatherman guy because that's where I started.
Right. Yeah, I started with the Gerber, and then I resisted the Leatherman for a while, and they're not cheap, so I waited until I was given one of those as well, and as you know, it's something I would buy if I didn't have it now. Now that I've had it.
Um, let's go a little field here, though. Are there any other tools that you carry like that?
So I always my not like that, but my everyday carry knife. This is a little out of the ordinary. I carry it. It's actually Gerber. It's the Gerber EAB Light, and it is a utility knife. You can tell it's all sorts of messed up from cutting some drywall. And the thing about this is I thought to myself, I was carrying, the Benchmade or CRKT or lots of different knives that I had, and I was always so hesitant to use them because the things I needed to cut might break or dull the blade, and I didn't want to ruin a really expensive knife. And I was mostly cutting boxes or just had to pop something open or whatever it was. And I thought, man, what if I'm looking at the function that I have, what's going to help me the most? And turns out it's just this utility knife, because I could beat the heck out of that and then just unscrew that, swap out the blade, and they're 10 cents each, and I have a super sharp knife ready to go.
And that's what you carry instead of, say, a regular pocket knife like a buck 110 or even a 0.55?
Yeah. So I carry the Leatherman on my belt. So it has its larger blade if I really need a strong blade, plus the other things. But for almost all of my cutting, it's usually boxes or cutting a zip tie, opening something, just the regular stuff. It's not really a bushcrafting knife, but I'm working in in an office. Yeah, this is my command center here.
Right. Well, and bushcrafting knives are overrated. I was talking with some other bushcrafters recently, some instructors, and we were laughing that, like, I have a huge BK2 in this like leather sheath and with a ferro rod on it, and that's around my belt when people show up for my courses. But then once I introduce everybody, everybody's oohed and awed at my big knife. I pull out my little Mora knife companion, and that's the one I really use.
Right.
The big bush knife is just to impress people.
Yeah, the little Mora knife, the companion's awesome. That's the one I use, and when I take the kids out, and we do any bushcrafting, that's what it is. The little bushcrafting we do.
Yeah, yeah. Next up, shelter and fire ignition. And I want to give a little background on this because this was one of those categories I struggled with, which way to go. And at Valiant, what we teach is we don't really teach the core four. We teach what we call the key three, which is your shelter and your water and your food. And we teach fire kind of, excuse the Star Trek reference, but that's our prime directive. Because there you go, nicely done.
Yeah.
So with so fire, we teach, all right, you can use that as part of your shelter. You can use that to disinfect your water. You can use that to prepare your food. So that kind of is overarching. So on this one, I went with, well, shelter and fire, depending on the situation, can fit kind of that same role. So that's why I put them together. Where'd you go with that?
Oh, this was a tough one. A lot of options, especially with two categories built into one. So looking at fire, I thought about the ferro rods. Those are tried and true. I thought about regular lighters and huge lighters, or Zippo, and even a road flare. It's pretty surefire way to have a fire. And then I was really thinking about the just the regular Bic or Scripto lighter, and that's what I carry EDC, and it's got a little cover so the thing doesn't get pushed. I almost went with that, almost. And I was looking at the shelter options, and I thought about ponchos or garbage bags or a larger poncho, or an emergency blanket, or even a tarp. I think I could fit that in my backpack with everything else. And I thought about the emergencies, the disasters I would face, and I want some sort of weatherproofing a little bit, but also knowing that I'm most likely going to be inside my house or a building or in my car. And I even looked. I keep one of these in my car so that I can heat up water, melt snow, heat up some food, whatever. But still, I thought, all right, so that's not an ignition source, even though it's a fuel source. What I ended up going with was it's a Mylar bivy, and it's like the emergency blankets, but it's multi-layered and much bigger. So it's like a sleeping bag. You unroll it, you crawl inside it. It will offer some weather protection, and it will reflect a lot more heat. I can use it indoors or outdoors, and it's reusable. It's likely to tear if you're using it, but it would cover my warmth shelter needs better than just having a fire, especially if I'm indoors and can't light a fire.
So for your fire, I was going to ask, everyday carry, you carry the Bic?
Yeah, well, I carry the cheaper Scripto, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people think, well, you got to go with a ferro rod because if the Bic gets wet or whatever. And I tested it, stuck it in a cup of water for 15 minutes, took it out, blew out the water. Took me about a minute of trying to blow out the water and striking it, and I got fire again. So it doesn't take a whole lot. It's not going to get ruined from sitting in some water if you got submerged or had to cross some water. But yeah, everyday carry, I keep a lighter. It's reliable and easy to use.
Hey, and hold that lighter up there again. That little cover thing you got on there. Where'd you get that?
So I actually got that down at Prepper Camp, and there's the Eco Ethic Solar. They were doing some solar. They were a vendor there, and that was the giveaway they had on their table. And they had 3D printed these. And so I grabbed one, and I realized later I should have grabbed, a dozen of them because it is handy. The one problem with keeping one of these in your pocket is that the fuel trigger gets pushed and it drains the fuel without realizing it. But this covers it, and you don't have to worry about that. So I'm not losing fuel just by having this in my pocket.
Are you familiar with the Bearhard heavy duty emergency blankets?
The Bearhard, no.
Because I carry one of those in my bag, and much the same way you were describing, and I was just wondering where they might compare in thickness. I wish I had mine here with me to show you.
I'm not sure. This is the Blizzard, I think, but the SOL has one that's a bit smaller than it. And then I don't know. I'm not familiar with Bearhard.
Yeah, the Bearhard, it has the reflective on one side, and then you can get multiple colors on the other side, and you get a camo. You can do a green, whatever. Hey, well, let's look at water. Do you like to carry your water, or are you going to source it and filter it in the field?
Good question. So my mind immediately went to a Sawyer. That was my first thought, and then alternatives. There's the Life Straw, which is a little less functional, but still pretty good. And then also, this is a Seychelles. There are other brands. This one you source the dirty water, and then it filters it as you drink it. So you have a container with it, and those are great. But if it's an emergency kit, short term, what I decided to go with was just water. So maybe I'm going to keep one container, but more likely several. This is what I normally keep. I several bottles of water. But that's the philosophy for for immediate needs, because you look at your needs and then you break it down into time periods, and you have immediate, which is like 0 to 3 days. Short term is, the way I look at it, up to about 2 weeks. Midterm to about 3 months, and then long term is a year and beyond. And for everything, your immediate needs should be ready to go. You shouldn't have to think about it. You shouldn't have to filter. I mean, if this is ready to go, but all the filters are, but I would still have to find the water. And if I'm dealing with my house that's, covered in rubble or debris, or if I'm stranded somewhere, I don't want to have to worry about an extra thing. I've got the emergency I'm dealing with, and I want to just have water ready to go.
Yeah, I carry a Sawyer. I had never used a life straw until when I went to Puerto Rico after Maria. It was my first time deploying with the Red Cross. And of course, all of my thinking up to then had been, take care of me. I hadn't really had to think of, embedding, with the group. Is like, all right, I need to provide for me and carry a radio. That's my deal.
Right.
And when we were staging in Atlanta before flying down, they had a conference room filled with supplies. I mean, you could take more Nutri-Grain bars than you could think of, and they wanted you to stuff in your pack. And I went over and I grabbed a life straw, and I thought, well, I'll just have one of these. I have my Sawyer, but I'll have one of these with me. And the lady there, she said, "Oh, grab as many as you can carry." And I said, "Well, I don't want to be greedy, and take them." She said, "No, keep one for yourself and pass the others out to the locals down there." And it's like,
Yes.
oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience with the life straw, and it's handy. But what I don't care for about the life straw is you've got to put your face to the water.
Right.
I
So,
like the Sawyer that I could find a water bottle out there and use that with the Sawyer.
right. Yeah, just screwing it on the top.
Yep.
So one other thing about the life straw, anytime I recommend or find anybody interested in carrying a life straw, is if they're putting it in their kit, if this is what you're getting, because this is usually the cheapest. Sometimes you can find these on a killer deal on Amazon, and it's usually like the orange one for some reason.
Right.
But the life straw, you can get those at Costco or Sam's Club for pretty good price for a multi-pack. And you get like an Nalgene bottle or something like that. So where you can scoop up the water, you don't have to put your face down in there. You scoop up the water, and then you just drink out of that bottle, and you can close it up and keep it contained.
Now, having said that about the, what I did about the Sawyer and the life straw, I'm 100% on board with you, though, of just have a bottle full of water in your bag. In fact, I even go a bit further, and I advocate to our students and those that come to our courses, say, make sure you're just plain old hydrating during the
Right.
day. So that, my daughter, she had a phrase in her school chorus when they'd be telling her to drink all the time, hydrate or dihydrate.
Yeah. Hydrate or dihydrate.
So yeah, really, ultimately, hydrate as you should every single day, and then just have that bottle of water in that bag that's ready to go, so you're not having to worry about that. And I like that philosophy you have of, hey, I've got enough stuff I need to worry about. The more stuff I can have ready to go that I don't have to source or process, the better.
Right. Yeah. Even in an emergency that you're at your own home, sometimes just having your emergency kit and something ready to go versus going to your fridge or your pantry or anything else, and preparing something, it's better just to have it ready to go.
Yeah, here for hurricanes, because that's unique in disasters that we see it coming.
Right.
And of course we all rush and fill up the bathtubs and get all that. But if you're at a place where you're going to have a hurricane or a tornado and you have no idea it's coming, you don't have time to prepare all that stuff. So I like that idea you have of just go ahead and have that ready to go rather than having to source it and think about it.
Yeah.
All right. How about first aid, sanitation, hygiene, that type of thing?
Such a good one. This was also a tough one. I thought about, the heavy hitters, like a cat tourniquet or an emergency trauma bandage or Israeli bandage. those are great for trauma. And like when you need a tourniquet, you need a tourniquet. You can improvise them, but really nothing compares. Oh, there are a couple that compare, but a cat is so easy that my little kids can use it. Since they were 5, but it's got basically one function. I thought about like a cravat that can be used for a lot of different things. I could also improvise a tourniquet. You've got to practice so that you know the principles of a tourniquet application, so you can do it. This is a tool, but it's a medical tool. The trauma shears, that comes in super handy, especially if you want to cut a penny in half for the kids. The entertainment aspect. So I didn't use that one either. For sanitation, I had the idea of these little wipes.
Yeah.
Get one of these tabs, put it in there, put some water in, and those come in handy when we're out with the kids. But also, we've got a kid in diapers, so we have wet wipes normally. So that's not a primary thing. And you don't really need those to replace toilet paper, because toilet paper is so compact already that this is not as much as a roll of toilet paper. A roll of toilet paper is going to come in much more handy. Then I also thought about, for sanitation, these WAG bags. They changed the name since I got these. So there's like the Ready, the Restop 2, and then the WAG bag has the new name as well. But it's basically just a waste bag. Those are super handy in a lot of situations. And it's got the powder in there that absorbs the smell and the liquid and the waste and all that. Ultimately, what I decided to go with was, this is my favorite first aid kit item. And I just use 2x2 gauze and then the cohesive bandage. This is the stuff you get when you give blood, but it's also just used as a bandage. You can apply a little bit of gauze, and then you wrap this. It is elastic, but it's not going to be like a tourniquet. It's not going to cut off the blood flow, but it will keep some pressure on the wound. It could be a small wound, a big wound. I chose it over even a first aid kit. That comes in most handy, but this is most versatile. So it's moderate wounds, minor wounds, and in all the weird places the kids get cut, and it sticks to itself. So you just wrap it around and it sticks to itself. You don't need to worry about safety pins or medical tape or any of that. It's just all basically included in itself. So the co-band, the cohesive bandage, is my first aid selection for my emergency kit.
Well, since you brought it up, the first aid kit, what do you look for in a first aid kit for that 72 hours? You had the tourniquet, you had, the Israeli bandage, but just for the 72 hours, what do you look for in that first aid kit? Just something really basic, or do you add those extras?
So I always supplement. I get just a prepackaged first aid kit. These are, it says 81 pieces, but 20 of those are plastic bandages, 10 of them are fabric bandages, and then another 10 are just like the little spots, for mosquito bite or whatever. So a lot of it is filler and kind of unnecessary. So if you're going to do a kit, building one is usually, if you just have a little container or bag, you can build one for cheaper than what you get them for. But I always supplement with the co-band, and then use a little bit of a trauma stuff, a tourniquet, the emergency trauma bandage, and then I usually do some splinting material, SAM splint, a roll of gauze. The co-band can work with the SAM splint as well. You wrap it around several times to hold and that's the moldable splint that you can put on an extremity. But I always supplement it in my emergency kits. But this covers, especially because I have kids, covers the basics. They usually just want a Band-Aid, and that's kind of a go-to. But this one is, the co-band is what's more practical and functional for when I need it.
When we recorded this, the first attempt, I had made a comment about, knowing how to use particular tourniquets and things like that before you do it. And you made a great line. You kind of spun my head around when you talked about, but having it there for somebody else to use on you if you need it. And I was like, Oh yeah, that's right. If I needed it, did that come from your training as a combat medic? Is that the thought
Yeah.
process there?
So some things, I'll make a distinction. Some things you carry and can for other people to use on you, or that you can use on other people. And it would be like a tourniquet, and that was a standard practice for the military. If you went up to somebody when we were on convoys and doing operations, everybody had an individual first aid kit on their body armor, but they also carried a tourniquet in one of their lower leg pockets, just an
Hmm.
extra tourniquet. And if you went up to somebody who was wounded, the standard operating procedure, what I taught all of the combat lifesavers, which everybody gets trained as a combat lifesaver. When I'm training them, I tell them, you use that person's first aid kit. You use their stuff on them, and then you save your stuff for you or for somebody who doesn't have it. And that way, it's like, hey, this person already has. They've got a chest seal, they've got a tourniquet, they've got an emergency trauma bandage, they've quick clot gauze, all in their individual first aid kit. I'm going to use that on them. So you can carry this stuff, and especially if you're shooting, going to a range, or doing any of that, everybody should be familiar with how to use that. So the distinction I want to make is, don't carry an entire hospital in your bag hoping that you're going to run across a neurosurgeon who's going to
Yeah.
perform brain surgery. Like, if you don't know how to use a suture kit, then you don't need a suture kit. But it's not that hard to learn. There are plenty of YouTube videos, and you can practice on a pig's foot or a banana or anything. Like, so if you want to learn how to do that, do it. But in most cases, you're not going to need to suture something right away, because you can use things like the emergency trauma bandage or even the Coban to add enough compression to keep it. You just got to make sure that the bleeding stops, and the stitches aren't necessarily going to keep the bleeding stopped. So don't carry things hoping somebody's going to know how to use it. Carry things that you and the people around you can know how to use, and then they could be used on you. So a tourniquet, like I said, my kids, no, we went through it. They learned how to do it in just a couple minutes, and could apply it effectively. So it's not a difficult thing to learn. And if you have something in your kit, just train your family, do a little drill, practice with it. But you don't have to worry about surgical tools or any of that, and unless you train it with it.
Yeah, we as teachers, when they take us through that training, we actually learn how to use a tourniquet and how to use an Israeli bandage. Um, and it was one of those things where when you said it, I knew the concept behind, police or sheriff's deputies, that they'll use that same concept for a gunshot wound or in combat. And is one of those moments where I went, well, duh, of course,
Right.
think that way. One other thing I wanted to ask you about regarding the first aid kits, and again, we're adding more tools here, but when it comes to meds, if you had to emphasize like head over gut, would you go for pain relief or would you go for digestive relief if you could only have one of the two?
Whew. No, that's a really good question. I would go with gut relief. Head relief is usually headaches or head pain is usually a symptom of something that's happening, something like dehydration or another illness. And a gut issue usually will compound that. It's going to be bad on its own, but it will also create more dehydration. So you're not solving the problem, or even doing like a stopgap if you are dulling the pain with like a headache medicine. But if you can stop the gut problems, your gastrointestinal issues. Wow, that was
That's right. I could edit that one for you.
no, don't. Yeah, so you've got these GI issues that you're going to get diarrhea, or if it's the other way around and you're getting plugged up, and that can compound and create more issues. It might be caused by something else, but a headache is usually just a symptom of something, and stopping the headache isn't going to stop any of the other systemic issues. Where something's happening in your gut, it might be caused by something else, or it might just have been something you ate or drank, but you need to stop that, and so it doesn't compound, it doesn't create more issues.
Hmm. Yeah, Where are you on the idea that sometimes you want to avoid pain relief medications because you can do further injury to something? And it's like, well, because I'm not feeling it, I'm not minding it and taking care of it.
Yeah, I think you would have to take some pretty heavy stuff to get to that point. So don't abuse prescription drugs. It would probably have to be prescription strength. And I think you should, like, if you're taking medicine for a headache, it should be, I'm taking medicine for a headache and then I'm also hydrating. And if you're using something like the liquid IV or the Relights, electrolytes, I always keep those with my water stuff too, because if I have water that I've boiled or that I've used tabs, like purification tabs on, then I want it to taste better. So I try to put some sort of electrolyte in there, but that's going to help your water absorption. These are incredibly effective. It is almost like getting an IV. It's just allowing your body to absorb it through its natural gut.
Well, with that, of course, we're coming to calories now. What are you doing for nutrition or just to get calories?
Oh, yummy, yummy. Let's see. So this is only 45 calories, so that's out. And the other one, I don't think has, 5 calories in that one. But that's because this one is packed full of sugar. Mm-hmm. So if you are in an emergency, you need a little boost of energy, maybe go for the sugar. So I went to some of the go-tos, things like, you talk about Nutrigrain bars or Cliff bars. Rule those out. I mean, you would need a good handful of them, and you also want to drink quite a bit of water. These, the Mountain House meals or other, there are other brands. These are pretty good. They have test kitchens, research and development. They go through the process of making sure they're not disgusting, and they reconstitute pretty well. They have a long shelf life, but you do need water to make these. So if you are planning on having this, then you're going to basically double the amount of water you need. And then I also thought about things like this Compact Provisions. There are other brands like Daytrex that they're basically just calorie bars. This one is pretty simple. It's got wheat, flour, palm fat, soy protein, and sugar. And it's just this little brick. You can also add water to this and turn it into a little porridge, but a box of this is for one adult for one day.
So it's like 21st century hardtack.
Right. Yeah. It's got a pretty good shelf life. They say it says 5-year minimum, and I've already opened this one. I've taken it out of its foil packaging and the interior plastic packaging. So this one's shelf life is not going to be 5 years. These have a much longer shelf life. The Mountain House and ReadyWise, they're freeze dried and they'll last a really long time. But you do have to be careful not to puncture or damage the packaging. What I ultimately went with was something maybe a little less tasty, but offers me a little more variety, and it's an MRE. Okay. So this one's vegetable lasagna, so it's not the tastiest one, but it'll do. And the thing I like about MREs is they have variety, and I can take it apart and eat some now, eat some later, but it stays packaged. This I have to make at once, and I can maybe close it back up, but these ones have a zipper seal, but you don't have any refrigeration to keep it fresh. So an MRE, you can eat it cold, or you can heat it up and it tastes a little bit better. It usually has some sort of spice or hot sauce packet in it. It's got gum. It also has the little, like the toiletry, the little bit of toilet paper, maybe a wet nap or something. But that didn't come into consideration when looking at the sanitation. But it's got an entree, a side, like a bread or a cracker, and then something to go on the bread and cracker, like cheese or peanut butter, and then a snack, like a cookie or candy.
And how many would you carry for 72 hours? Would you do one per day, or have one and try to stretch it over your 72 hours?
So at a minimum, I have one per day. Okay. And that's kind of that's my go-to right now, is one per day. It's pretty big, so it is a little bulky, but I also, in reality, I supplement. I keep some for our family, I keep one box of these. I don't like put one in everyone's kit, but it's just something else that we have as an option. So I keep that in my kit, and I don't put them in my wife's or my kids. So we all have Crisp bars, we all have fruit snacks and jerky and like trail mix, things like that. So we try to have a variety of things. I think that's important for morale. And then some things we like. They like the fruit snacks. They like candies, but we also want some nutritious things. So we're trying to find a good balance of everything. Applesauce pouches, those little squeeze pouches, kids love them, and those nutritious. They've got a pretty long shelf life. We rotate through those every once in a while, and let the kids eat the stuff and then restock it.
How old are your kids?
Oh, so they range from about 2 to 9.
And do they all have their own bag?
Not the youngest.
Right,
so
not the 2-year-old?
Yeah, everyone else has one, and what we put in theirs is the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife and I, we have a little bit more. So they each have just a regular school backpack, and we try not to go very heavy on them because we'll end up carrying it if it's too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a like a hiking backpack. It's taller. It doesn't have a frame, but I'm building a new one with a frame made out of a rucksack.
Okay.
But right now mine's just a hiking bag, and I can carry much more in there. Plus, extra like blankets and things like that. We keep our sleeping bags separate. We keep that just on a shelf with the camping gear, and not in there. But in each of the kits, they have a couple of the Mylar bags because those are light. So for them, it's the basic bare minimum, and then for me, everything else to supplement.
How old will the 2-year-old be before they have their own bag?
Oh, good question. Yeah, not necessarily an age. We go on hikes every once in a while, and I think when he can, I think I'll probably start him small and get like a little fanny pack, put some basics in there, so something he can carry, or a little bag. But it'll probably be about 5 years old.
Yeah, I'm with you. Not necessarily by age, but more, by size. And I really like that idea of, when you're out for a hike or you're even just a day hike, getting them used to the idea. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Wildcard, what'd I miss?
Whew. All right. So those were pretty good. What did you miss? Oh my goodness, where do I start? No, those were great. Those were great. Those were good. It's the Sharpie. Just kidding. It's not Sharpie. That's part of my EDC. But it's those things that you don't know you need until you need them. Until you carry it, then you use them every day. I looked at a lot of different things. The topics you use, the categories you use were great. They covered your basic needs, and anybody can get by 72 hours with those types of things. So I looked at a lot of different things. I looked at like whistles for communication. This is just a cheap plastic one with the P in there. This is a P-less whistle. So that one's better because if this one gets wet or frozen, it doesn't work. This one will continue to work. Thought about that. Thought about the crank, the radio. It's got a radio and a siren for signaling if you're stranded. It has a flashlight, but you do have to keep it cranked, and it doesn't have a long battery life. Also rule that one out. Got a phone. What do I need that for? Just kidding. Other tools, things like paracord or duct tape. I'm not a huge fan of paracord bracelets. This one does have, it's packed full of survival stuff. Some fishing line. It's got a fire starter built in. So as far as paracord bracelets go, this is the kind you would want. But untying that to get the actual paracord is going to take forever. So I usually keep paracord just tied up or spooled. This one's also got like a compass. So this is kind of a fun thing, but not my choice. This came in handy. This is the power pack. You can use them to jump your
Oh,
car,
yeah.
but you can also charge your phone a few times with it. That came in handy for a recent power outage I had, and I was super glad I have them. I have the smaller ones with the solar panel on them in my backpack that I carry with me every day. And the solar panels for me have never really worked very, very well in keeping those charged. But then I looked at the other options. I thought about going back to one of the other categories and pulling from them, like maybe one of the filters or the lighter, just in case, or some more food. This is a tough one, and I narrowed it down to two. So two, I guess, categories. One would be lighting, so headlamps, flashlight, and the other category would be like gloves. The gloves are always handy. You come in, and I think it might be weather dependent, but also just functionality. This was pretty hard to narrow it down between these two, and I went with the headlamp. That is my wild card. It doesn't have any life-saving properties except maybe as a signal. It's got a few settings on it. It has the flashing. So maybe as a signal it can work, but just practically, it is so good to have this when you need it. And it's a headlamp versus a flashlight you hold, so you keep your hands free. And it's another one of those things that when you have so much else to worry about, this just makes things easier. So it doesn't actually help you to survive necessarily, but it is easier. Now the gloves were the runner-up for my wild card because they keep your hands warm. They are protection. You can do a lot more, especially if it's cold, if there's a lot of debris you have to work through. So in my real emergency kit, I have gloves, and in my car I've got them. But for my 5 to survive wild card, number 6 item, it's the headlamp.
Yeah, I with that headlamp, it kind of brings us full circle. First I'll say, yeah, for the signaling, I think it's dynamite. But there's something about how much having some light when it's dark can improve your morale.
Right.
Which, some people are like, well, is that really part of survival? Nah, keeping your wits about you, I think is integral to survival. So I like that pick. I can deal with cold hands. I can put them in my pockets if I have to. But overnight, if it's 72 hours, I've got at least 2 night times I've got to get through, and having that light, just to improve my morale, I think is really important.
And to be able to, because once the sun goes down, you can't do anything. If it's too dark, you can't see, you can't get yourself if you have to build a shelter, you can't situate yourself. If you've got no other lighting, just knowing that I'll be able to see that for that period of time, I can still function, that I'm not completely dependent on the sun, is a huge benefit for me.
Well, and even if you're at home during those 72 hours, having a light like that you can have, on your head so your hands are free. So if you need to work around something, or even just, setting it on a table, or, hanging it from a lampshade or whatever, it's so versatile.
Yeah, and the power outage we have, and the power outage might be influencing this, because it was last month. The power outage we had, you were going upstairs, downstairs, down into the basement to grab something. I just had that headlamp on me all the time. I turned it on when I needed it, but I had it there all the time, and it was just so useful, so handy, functional. It did improve morale, just having a little bit of light, not being cast into the darkness, and overall it was just beneficial for everything. If I had to run outside, if I had to take the dog outside, and that's still regular. I use one of them every day, and just when I take the dog out at night, it's super handy.
Fantastic. I love that pick. Well, I've had a blast. I hope you've enjoyed it, even though we've had to do it twice. I think the second one might be better than the first one.
Yeah, I think so too. I had more fun this time.
Good. Yeah, you got to point out exactly how many categories I failed to even bring up. And Hey, where can people go to find out more about your work, particularly as the preparedness guy? And I'm going to plug it before you get there. If you're watching on YouTube, you've got to get Nat's Family Emergency Preparedness Plan template. It's I'm not just saying this because you're here. It's my favorite that I've seen in
Thank you.
the last several years. But where can people find out more about you?
I'm most active on Instagram at the Preparedness Guy. You can find my website at www.preparednessguy.com. I also have, I'm less active on YouTube or Facebook, but I have a presence there. So if you want to interact with me, talk to me, go ahead and go to Instagram or email me. You use the contact page on my website. And I also have a course, an online course on outdoor core.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a preparedness foundations, and we talked about the not having the sexy preparedness. This is kind of a homework preparedness course, but it is based on what I do as a professional. I'm an emergency manager, and we use tools and data and processes to help the organizations prepare. And what I'm doing is I'm taking those things that we use for organizations and kind of hoarding the knowledge and applying it to people. So I have a couple worksheets in there where you can go in and you can identify your vulnerabilities based on how hazards impact your needs. So you figure out how your needs are affected, which create a vulnerability, and then you go into the needs. You pick 3 needs, and you do, like I said, how you build them out on immediate needs, short term, midterm, and long term. So for example, water, immediately, you should always have water ready to go. Most everyone can store 2 weeks of water in their home, but after that, it starts to get a little tougher. So how are you going to collect water and purify it? So that's the long term. So you look at your needs in that way. Immediately, how can I have this ready to go? And I have spreadsheets built out that you can get on the course, and I talk you through different concepts and the 5 key phrases: personal responsibility, your needs assessment, your understanding your hazards, understanding your needs, making sure that you are prepared financially, and then taking action. And that's where the fun comes in. Your drills and exercises, that's where you can actually get stuff. But it's based on principles that I've practiced and taught as a professional emergency manager. And I have a 20% off coupon. If you use the code PrepGuy5 for that course, then you can get 20% off.
Wow, you're a nicer guy than I am. I don't offer that big a discount on my course.
Well,
I will say that one of the things that really attracted me to your work was that data-driven idea, but it's not just data-driven, it's data-driven as it applies to your individual situation.
Yeah,
That's strong.
everybody's situation is different. Preparedness is a choose your own adventure story. It's not something that is a one size fits all. And that, as an emergency manager, you get the messaging from FEMA, from ready.gov, and they say, build a kit, make a plan, be informed. And it doesn't, I mean, for some people, that's not near, or for most people, it's not nearly enough. And then there are some people that they can't even do that. They don't know where the next meal is coming from. So you can't just say this is what everybody should be doing. You can say this is what most people can and should be doing, but you have to help them understand their needs, and then they can start to address their own individual needs.
Well, I'll definitely link to all of that. I'll have Instagram link. I'll have for Outdoor Core, and also preparednessguy.com link to all of those. And or you can my Instagram account. Go see who I'm following, both my personal one and the Valiant Outfitters one. You're going to find Nat stuff right up there at the top. You might even hear me laughing. Hey, I've appreciated. Great discussion. You brought some great stuff to the table. I hope we can do this again sometime. And I like some of those ideas you gave me before we started recording. I don't want to give away too much too soon, but I'm going to come back and hit you up for some of those ideas.
I'm looking forward to it.
Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again later. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.